Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment once everybody has joined the room. Just a few more, Rachel, and then we can get started.
I'm here. Oops. Yeah.
For those of you who are just joining us right now, we'll get started in just a moment. We're just letting everybody come into the room because we have quite a large attendance today. If you are able to mute your microphone, that would be great. Okay, Rachel, I'm going to let you turn it over to you and get started.
Sounds good. Thanks, Gwen. All right. Good afternoon or good morning to wherever you may be zooming in from. I'm Rachel Messerich, Programs Manager, Legacy and Editorial for the American Craft Council and the coordinator behind the American Craft Forum series. I'm so pleased to welcome you all to this American Craft Forum's program in association with our quarterly publication, American Craft Magazine. I'm speaking to you today from my home in Apple Valley, Minnesota, and representing the offices of the American Craft Council in Minneapolis, which are both located on the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of the Dakota and Ojibwe people. This place carries a complicated and layered history. In the thousands of years the Dakota people have been in relationship and kinship with the land here, and in the several hundred years since European settlers colonized the land that the state of Minnesota now occupies. The United States land seizure was a project of destruction that denied the Dakota free and unhindered access to land that fundamentally shapes their identity and lives. We pay tribute to the Dakota and Ojibwe and invite you to consider the land on which you live and the confluence of legacies that brings you to stand where you are, particularly through critical reflection and conversation with your own community. Fostering conversation and community are at the heart of ACC's mission, and American Craft serves as one of the most vital contributions in service to this mission and hopefully to the field of craft and American culture. ACC's 80-plus-year-old publication contributes to the craft conversation by shining a light on the diversity, resilience, beauty, and impact of American craft and its makers. In 2023, we look at craft through the lens of 4 themes: inhabit, vessel, wild, and collect. The editorial team is just wrapping up the spring issue, which will be hitting mailboxes in mid-February, and has plans well underway for the summer 2023 issue, Wild. We encourage pitches and submissions from our community and have more information on the rest of the 2023 themes on our website. Please check under Writer's Guidelines and Submissions for more information. Before I dive into the program and my introduction, I also just wanted to thank the ACC staff, particularly our Executive Director, Andrea Specht, our uber-talented editorial team, our amazing marketing team, and our Senior Director of Programs and Partnerships, Gwyn Rugenbrod-Smith, who is taking the behind-the-scenes tech helm for today's program. The American Craft Council is a national nonprofit member-based organization. As such, I would like to give a big shout out to our donors and members who make programs like this possible, and a very special thank you to the Minnesota State Arts Board and Wingate Charitable Foundation for their generous support. A few technical and logistical reminders: please make sure that your camera is off and your audio is muted for the program and conversation. We encourage you to participate in the talk via the chat feature and drop any comments or questions there. Closed captioning is available during this program. On the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a closed caption symbol. Clicking that button will turn this feature on and off. This program will be recorded and available for future viewing. In the winter issue, we explored the idea of inhabit. Not only how we occupy space, but how we live in it. The objects that we surround ourselves with, the furniture that we rest on, the studio, of our mind and imagination that fuels our creativity. This issue celebrates what it means to be at home, in oneself, in a community, in the world. This idea is no more prevalent than in the story about a truly inspiring partnership between the Furniture Society, a national arts nonprofit dedicated to advancing the art of furniture making, the STEAM Studio at UNC Asheville, and BeLoved Village, a project of the nonprofit BeLoved Asheville, building tiny houses for those that struggle with housing insecurity. Community is stronger with craft, and this partnership is a true feet on the ground example of the handmade making a difference in building stronger, more engaged communities. To provide a little more context and background on this partnership and to help guide us and our speakers through this conversation, I'd like to introduce our amazing moderator, Monica Hampton, who will in turn introduce our speakers more fully. Monica, I invite you to turn on your camera now. Monica is the executive director of the Furniture Society. She has had a lifelong interest in the arts and education. Her background is a combination of fine arts, art history, education, and public outreach, with an emphasis on program development for museums and organizations, specializing in history, fine art, craft, and design. In a past life, Monica has also served as the Director of Education for the Society of North American Goldsmiths, as well as the American Craft Council, though not at the same time. I had the pleasure of working with Monica on the ACC's 2016 conference in Omaha, Nebraska, and I'm so pleased to have her here today. Thank you so much, and take it away, Monica.
Thank you, Rachel. It's such a good experience to be back sharing the same screen, if not the same stage with you. So thank you for the kind introductions. I also want to thank Gwen Rookenbrod-Smith, the American Craft Council, and the editorial staff at American Craft Magazine for the opportunity to share this program with you. And I also want to thank the board of the Furniture Society, Pam Robinson, our Director of Education, and our program funders, the John and Robin Horn and Sarah Little Turnbull Foundations, and most recently the Maxwell Hanrahan Foundation, for their support of our programmatic vision. Today, I'll speak briefly about the Furniture Society and the Craft for a Greater Good origin story, and then we'll launch into a presentation about the evolution of Craft for a Greater Good in Asheville and our partnership with UNCA and BeLoved. We'll then segue into a moderated conversation ending in a Q&A. And I think, Rachel, you had also mentioned that if people have questions throughout, you can certainly populate the chat with questions and somebody will keep tabs on those. So a bit of background for those of you who don't know the Furniture Society. In fact, I hear quite a few times people say there is a Furniture Society, but we are here and we are thriving, and we are doing so through programs such as Craft for a Greater Good. The mission of the Furniture Society is to advance the art of furniture making by inspiring creativity, promoting excellence, and fostering an understanding of this art form and its place in society. Our vision is to cultivate a diverse community and conversations around furniture in all of its forms. As an organization, our goal is to sustain relevance for our members and the field. And we feel it's our duty and need to find ways to shape, serve, and impact our community. And therefore, we're working to create and cultivate a diverse community with broad perspectives. This will facilitate conversations and awareness around furniture and the tenets of making, positioning craft as a tool of empowerment. And we aim to achieve this by expanding the pipeline for engagement and sharing what our field has to offer. Yes, we want to lead conversations around craft, but we want to transform the field, stimulating the advancement of new ideas. And we want to turn those conversations into action. Through collaborations, partnerships, and community building, we hope that we can work to unify a fragmented field and to give back at the same time. And in this way, we hope to evolve, gain insights, and expand our reach. In this spirit, we are proud to introduce Craft for a Greater Good. CGG, as we banter it about around here, is an initiative to connect with and serve our annual conference cities through partnerships and the creation of impactful projects. TFS, the Furniture Society, aims to engage people through the creative problem-solving process of furniture making, which hopefully will position craft as a tool of empowerment and universal connection. We also hope that CGG will inspire young people to work with their hands, to engage in creative problem solving and understanding the value of making, to exemplify what our field has to offer, broadening our engagement with our members, to help identify and meet a need within a community, to co-create work with lasting social benefit and impact, to position our annual gatherings as more than just a single moment in time, but more as an ongoing platform for dialogue and action, to expand our membership, and to allow our membership members who carry a vast amount of knowledge to pass on skill sets to the next generation. We hope that it will also allow us to amplify our collective stories, our history, our knowledge and skills, adding depth and breadth to our impact. During the 2018 Furniture Society member meeting, a member received a standing ovation for the suggestion that the Furniture Society find ways to make a difference in the cities where we host our annual conferences. In response, the Craft for a Greater Good initiative was launched in 2019, version 1.0, in conjunction with our conference in Milwaukee. Our partners in this iteration were the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design, the Milwaukee Art Museum Teen Internship Program, and Victory Over Violence Park, a public park in that community that had been beset by gun violence, but who were seeking to change the community dynamics. Leading into the conference, the museum teens did site-specific interviews in the neighborhood where the benches were to be installed, and they drew inspiration from their own bench designs from the work of furniture maker Tom Lozer, and engaged in object studies with Dr. Sarah Ann Carter from the Chipstone Foundation to better understand the impact of objects on our world. During the span of the conference, attendees and students worked seamlessly together in the lab at Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design to construct the benches. Work began during the conference was continued by the teens in the Milwaukee Art Museum program, and the benches are now installed in the park with student-designed engaging signing for the Victory Over Violence Park. This project, which we thought was going to be a surface skim, turned out to be an incredible, eye-opening experience for the Furniture Society. And at that point, we knew we had a winning program combination. The program was generously funded at that point, thank you to the John and Robin Horn Foundation and the Sarah, let's see, I'm getting a little message that I need to probably turn up my volume or speak louder. I'm sorry about that. How's this? Can I get a thumbs up? Thank you. So we had a winning combination. The program has been generously funded at that point by the John and Robin Horn Foundation and the Sarah Little Turnbull Foundation to continue with new support in place with a boots on the ground local resident fellow to really be a liaison between the Furniture Society, the communities where we would be hosting our programming, and also with the community organization that we would partner in with. And thus we began to shape our 2.0 version in Asheville, North Carolina. So now if your cameras aren't already on, Brent and Ellie and Annie and Amy, please turn your cameras on. I would like to now launch into a little bit of an explanation about who these incredible partners are and a little bit about how this program has gone over the past 2 years. So linking arms with TFS member and maker extraordinaire, Brent Skidmore, we began to talk about what a partnership might look like in Asheville. Without hesitation, Brent introduced us to Amy Cantrell, who is the founder of BeLoved. Brent serves as an associate professor of art and art history. He's the director of craft studies and public arts and humanities chair at UNC Asheville, and he is the co-founder of the STEAM Studio, a fabrication and design lab built for interdisciplinary teams focused on collaboration and innovation. While Brent's background is actually in sculpture, his primary focus has been studio furniture until he recently began making sculpture again. When not working for UNC Asheville, in the Asheville community, or assisting with STEAM studio projects, Brent is focused on mentorship and community work focused on social change through collaborative making. He has been an educator for over 31 years at universities and craft programs around the country. Brent, thank you for all of your energy. Amy Cantrell is one of the co-directors of BeLoved Asheville. She founded the organization in 2019, believing that building community was a key part to transforming the struggles happening all around us, and that community is an art form. BeLoved is a community of people putting love into action every day, bringing people from all walks of life together to create innovative solutions to some of the most challenging problems of our time: housing and food insecurity, poverty, lack of health care, racism, and climate change. Many of BeLoved's project works at the intersections of community, creativity, and equity. Amy was school educated at Converse College and Columbia Theological Seminary in Atlanta, and was, quote, street educated at Open Door Community in Atlanta and at BeLoved Asheville. BeLoved Asheville has a long history of delivering compassion, support, and relief to people in need. BeLoved Asheville is building a village of 12 micro homes to sow the seeds of community while bringing home their neighbors who have struggled with housing insecurity. Thank you, Amy, for all of your continued work. And so we began working in partnership with these three organizations, UNC Asheville and BeLoved and the Furniture Society, to determine who would help us on the ground, which is when Ellie Richards and Annie Evelyn entered the picture as a duo, applying for the local resident fellow position. The idea with the local resident fellow was to help strengthen our relationship within the community of Asheville. And boy, as you will see in the coming conversation points, did they ever make a difference? Can you all still hear me okay? Thank you. Annie Evelyn is a furniture maker living in Bakersville, North Carolina. She has been a resident artist at Penland, the Wingate resident at multiple universities, was awarded the John D. Minnick Fellowship, and exhibited nationally and internationally. Annie has been working to create community throughout her artistic practice, mentoring teens, teaching art and upholstery in community and youth centers, as well as putting on arts-based events across the country. In 2019, she co-founded Crafting the Future with a dedicated group of artists from Penland School of Craft to address the glaring lack of racial and ethnic diversity in the fields of art and craft and design. Eleanor, or Ellie Richards, looks to the tradition of both woodworking and the ready-made to create eclectic assemblage, installation, and objects exploring intersections of labor and leisure. She has traveled extensively to investigate the role that play and improvisation have on the artistic process. Her work, both furniture and sculpture, have been included in exhibitions at the Mint Museum, the Center for Craft Creativity and Design, SOFA Chicago, and the Society of Contemporary Craft. Ellie is currently a 3-year resident artist at Penland. So that is the cast of characters. And in essence, before we launch into our visual presentation about the work that was done in Asheville, I just want to say that Craft for a Greater Good has allowed us to promote the value of making and to bring it into the broader culture where we feel that it belongs and where we feel that others can benefit from it. Our host communities, as well as our members, have expressed an excitement about this program that has far exceeded our expectations and has reinforced our belief in this program. So without further ado, I would like to invite Ellie and Annie and our folks, Brent and Amy, to join us as we present a visual slideshow about working with Craft for a Greater Good in Asheville on the ground.
Thank you, Monica, and thanks everyone for being here. So grateful for this opportunity to talk with you all, because truly Craft for a Greater Good and all of its constituents, all of its partnerships, all of the individuals who have donated their time and effort. It's really a complex situation. It's layered, it's deep, and I wish and hope that nobody ever asked me about it sorry, there's like, does anyone hear that weird honking noise? What is that? Okay. Fair enough. So I was saying, I really hope that nobody ever asked me about CGG in an elevator, because I wouldn't be able to provide an adequate response. It's way too complicated, and we are so grateful for this conversation and for the article and the Inhabit issue of American Craft Magazine to share this story, with one of our major goals and objectives being that this is something that can be recreated. It's something that you can join in and participate in. It's a continuum. And so this isn't, there's no start, there's no end. This is a story that we're telling, and it's truly so exciting. So to get started, I want to break it down for you. Next slide. Craft for a Greater Good is essentially a tripod. You have Craft for a Greater Good, which sits under the Furniture Society. You have, it's a tripod of organizations. You have STEAM Studio, which is a part of a University of North Carolina, Asheville. And then you have BeLoved, a nonprofit in Asheville. These three partnerships sort of are pulling together our resources to create the work and accomplish our goal of turning houses into homes. Next slide. So Monica went over this, and we can continue to the next. And I want to invite Brent to give a synopsis of STEAM Studio. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a 12,000 square foot. Well, thanks for having me here, Ellie. Appreciate that. And it's and thanks for everyone being here. It's a 12,000 square foot making space, and we had the problem that many universities have, not enough space and equipment for sculpture specifically and engineering here at UNC Asheville. And so those two forces combined, and 6 founders of faculty and staff in 2015. And now we have a very active space. It's adjacent to our campus, about a mile off campus. And we host senior design there, and engineering and mechatronics. We host parts of our Sculpture 1 class and parts of our Sculpture 2 class. And then BFAs can also do their solo show work there also. Generously funded by Wingate Charitable Foundation. And now in a Duke Energy grant in the very beginning, actually, that came in through engineering. So we run a current selection of classes that support university students. Obviously, it's built for faculty, student, and staff. And then one of the expansions of STEAM Studio this year, and specifically the last 3 years, has been our community programming, which is called Skill Set. All of this can be found on our website. Sarah Sanders is the director of STEAM Studio there, and we have two other full-time employees, Amanda Simmons and Leslie Rosenberg, who Amanda works with Skill Set, and Leslie as a shop technician, and Amanda works with Skill Set. When you can go on through, I think Ellie can control the pace too if you want. I can't hear anything anymore. Oh, you're muted. Yeah.
Essentially, STEAM Studio for our project was a major resource for us with equipment and materials and instructors. So Leslie Rosenberg was a key person in this project who was lending her knowledge and skills as an educator. So without that space, so much of our work and the students involved wouldn't have come to the table.
I guess one thing to add too would be is that we had planned to have a conference there, the Furniture Society conference there, a number of times actually. We planned 3 times.
That is true. A little
So
thing.
Amy, we're going to invite you to speak about BeLoved.
Sure, it's my honor to be here today, and for all the organizations and all of you out there tuning in to this really special program. Want to just thank the American Craft Council and the Furniture Society and STEAM Studio, our partners here. BeLoved is a really special organization. We focus on home health, equity, and opportunity for all here in our community. And we do that through, I heard the word earlier, empowerment. It's about building community and empowering each other to share our gifts. And through that, we've created a number of really powerful projects, including a huge response to the COVID-19 pandemic, community gardens and backyard gardens in neighborhoods, as well as free farmers markets, sharing over 5 million pounds of food in the last 2 years here in our community. We have the first homeless and formerly homeless street medic team in the nation. And we do a lot of organizing around ending systemic racism and really honoring culture. And we heard a lot about that today with Indigenous communities there in Minnesota, which is really powerful. Really grateful to be launching a new community initiative, which is a food truck. That will be sharing healthy meals in food deserts, but also teaching kids and youth food ways from African American, Appalachian, and Latinx cultures, and as well as our indigenous culture here in Western North Carolina. So we're so excited to be a part of this group. And of course, one of our most powerful ongoing initiatives is the BeLoved Village, where we're building deeply affordable homes for people in our community, and doing that through the power of community and the gift of turning these houses into homes through the power of craft. So I can't wait to sort of dig into that more as we go along.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Amy.
Thanks, Amy, for the continued inspiration.
Thanks, Amy.
And Gwen, if you wouldn't mind moving to this slide here. And Amy, would you, would you feel comfortable sharing kind of how BeLoved first sort of coagulated or became, you know, a group of people working together?
Absolutely. So really BeLoved started building community with people that had been pushed to the margins for various different reasons, whether it's through racism or through poverty or homelessness. And so what we believed was that we were better together. And so we began to form community with queer and trans people, with people from all different backgrounds and ways of life. And we found home with each other, which is very powerful. So this picture is very poignant and is sort of the origin story of the BeLoved Village project. We had a knock on the door at our community house right downtown at BeLoved, and the police were there. And I answered the door, and they asked me if I could identify a body for them. And so I looked at this picture that they showed me, a woman lying in her red sleeping bag with her head lifted to the sky. She had been a Jane Doe for 5 days, Jane Doe 256. We knew her as our friend Janet Jones. And so our community held a public funeral for her. And this is the picture from that funeral. But that wasn't the end of it. We knew that we wanted to sound the alarm and say that this housing crisis was causing people to die too soon. And so beyond that, we had a group of people living through the housing crisis that met weekly at BeLoved, and we sat in a circle and we talked about what could we do to change things. And so when Janet died, indeed, basically her death was really taken into the heart of that circle, and people began to really feel a clarion call to rise up and change things. And so I remember one person turning to everybody else in the circle and saying, what are we going to do about this? And through that, our street medic team was formed 4 months after Janet's death. And then we went beyond that to have a very substantive conversation where people said we can't afford affordable housing, and the kind of housing that is created is not the kind of housing we want. People are often in spaces that were not very habitable and didn't feel like home. And so out of that, we began to dream a very bold vision of creating a new way home, which became the BeLoved Village project, creating deeply affordable homes because our people couldn't afford affordable housing being built. And to really begin to say, what makes a house a home? And we'll dig into that in this conversation, because that is really where this partnership birth was thinking about how do we do that? And what we began to say is energetically, you turn a house into a home through craft. This is the architectural drawings of our BeLoved Village project, and I'm sitting right now in the blue house, which is our model home here in the kitchen. And so it's a very inviting space. And there you see the outside having been built. Right now we have literally behind me, we have houses going up. We have volunteers here now. I hear saws whirring and hammers pounding back there. And so it's a really wonderful place to be, humming with activity. And we can't wait to bring many people home here to the BeLoved Village.
Thank you, Amy. Right now we were looking at a picture of stacked plywood that was salvaged from the city of Asheville after some of the Black Lives Matter protests. So it'll then be used back into various construction projects. So next slide, I want to give you a sort of short tour of the inside of the home. So as Amy said, you are sitting in the pilot home, and it's one of, I always forget, 11 or 12 homes, 12, okay, that are being constructed currently on a piece of land that is adjacent to a church, and that church donated the land to this project. Is that right?
Yes.
So the first pilot home was so important because it gave people really sort of it painted the real life picture of what was to become. And so in that house, next slide, it was furnished with wonderful actually already had some really great furniture in it, stuff that is sort of multi-use and sort of foldable and movable and stackable. Next slide. It is really a beautiful space. And so when we came in, we wondered, oh, it's already furnished, what can we do? Or what are the additional needs? And of course, there are 11 more houses being built. And so we set out to, create objects that would fill those future homes, as well as the pilot home, because a lot of this stuff was purchased in store. And our idea here is to, make these objects and imbue as much care and love into them as possible. And so some of the things in here still stay, but we kind of outfitted and furnished the home so that there's more, sort of natural materials and craft-based techniques being used to create functional objects. One of the first things we did when Annie and I, as the resident fellows, were working with BeLoved, was to sit down with, next slide, some of the community members. So these are people from the street medic team. Next slide. It was really important for us to spend a lot of time in the home in the beginning, just to understand the layout and understand the needs. So anyways, we were sitting with street medics and other community members and volunteers, asking sort of questions about what to them would make a house into a home. And what we heard back as one of our sort of key points of feedback was that having items that were multi-use was really important. Having items that had customability, so you could the future resident could pick and choose color, scale, just different sizes, shapes, and things. So we designed our projects to sort of accommodate that need. And that was a really, fun challenge for us, was how can we, call forward this type of work from our volunteers. So next slide. Next two slides. So that led us, Annie and I, to a huge brainstorming session of designing the Craft for a Greater Good programming. So our first project was the next slide, community workshops, and keep going. Nobody needs to see the boring text. So we sort of kicked it off with these two community-based workshops, which were hosted at the BeLoved Village in the church community space. And so these flyers went out to, they were sort of just regional. So we posted up in coffee shops in Asheville. It went out on Facebook through BeLoved's network, and we had a wonderful response. Our classes were filled to the max and even more. And our two sort of concepts were, we're going to have a skill sharing, workshop. So people are coming and learning a skill, and then they're also making furniture for the homes. We wanted these classes to be, we wanted a couple different ways for people to participate. Number one, we wanted this to be free if we wanted one option to be free. So we developed a sort of interesting payout structure in which You could take the class for free, you'd learn the skill, we would provide a chair and the material, but then you donate that chair back to BeLoved. The second option was that you could take the class and upholster one of our provided chairs, and but if you wanted to purchase the chair at the end, you could, and that money would go back to our project. And then the other option was you could bring your own chair and then like pay $50 for the experience. So we felt like this, how could you say no? we wanted to really give all of the options, all of the ins to take these classes. And if you can scan through some of the next, flip through some of the next pictures, you'll see Annie instructing a class on slip seat recovering, or slip seat upholstery. Next slide are some of our before and afters. So this sort of set the stage of taking sort of what was being tossed away and refurbishing it, refinishing, remoisturizing. We like gave these chairs a lot of love and a lot of life, took them down to their bones and built them back up with fresh materials. And they really sort of, we were shocked at what the makeovers that were possible. And so at the end of the day, next slide, we had a group of 15 or so people with these chairs that were going to be left for the future homes at BeLoved Village, and a lot of people who are now aware of what's going on. And this was our first like sort of community building workshop, and it was a huge success. Next slide. We followed that with a seat weaving workshop, same sort of thing, providing the chairs, and I taught basic shaker tape seat weaving. So we took the chair frames. Next slide, sort of flip through these, Gwen, thank you. Took these old Appalachian slapback chairs, refinished them, and gave the students the knowledge of this very simple way to make a seat. And
It's Leslie getting into it.
that's Leslie, that's Lynn, the STEAM Studio intern. And that's like a repeat picture, I guess. One of the fun moments from this project was having the chance to sneak in little messages into these chairs for the future residents, which is sort of one of the main core values of the project was that, as we're making these things, we're thinking about and thinking towards thinking towards the future residents and sending, messages of positivity and hope into their future and into the future of these objects. And we sort of believed that this would be sensed, and that this would be felt in the house that would then become a home. So the next sort of faction of our programming, there we are, hooray. And all of this is being stored by BeLoved, and we're thankful for that safe storage space while the other homes were being built. So as I was saying, the next faction of our programming was the UNCA STEAM Studio classes. So next slide. And I'm going to let Brent speak about this, but just to give you a quick rundown, STEAM Studio already has a wonderful network of students, and their outreach is incredible. So we were able to tap into that. And Brent also designed several semester-long courses that directly related to Craft for a Greater Good and produced work for the house. So Brent, this first few images are of us, Annie and I, coming in as sort of visiting artists for one of those classes.
Yeah, this was an introduction to a crew that had a class title. It was an Arts 310 course. All of our students have to take an Arts 310 course here, at least one. It's a place for me to engage with non-art majors, specifically in community builds, and that's how just align it. And of course, we had a great title for the class because we could call this one Craft for a Greater Good. But they started out after Annie and Ellie had come in, they did a small bandsaw project. And most of these students had never made anything like this. So you can keep going there. And one of the awesome things that came out of that class is that we built a sign on the shop bot. And then these students helped carve that and do digital files and then painted it. And then we've been back since with another group to recoat it with clear. And then we made an attempt at some nice donation signs that we did a few different versions of those given the paint that was used one day. And so there's some donation signs because at the church, BeLoved actually had a consistent program there where you could bring donations in for the community. And that's part of the sign. The sign, I think we got it in time. I think we got it in time for the 2020 Parade of Homes, if I remember right. So it added some identity there. This was one of the days that that same class did some thinking about what we could add to the class as far as the build-in. And so one specific thing we added when you first come in the door, we added a organizational system on the right-hand side in the living room. And then you go further into the kitchen area, we added another organization there. And then these are students on the installation bay. And then we went back and painted those, added some doors. And this is the wild crew that worked on that day. And it's Leslie there to my, I don't know if I'm left or right where I am, but she was really instrumental in the programming and the teaching of this class for sure. And then there's some of the finished items that we put inside the house. So our idea is that we would, once we get the other houses up and rolling, that I'll teach some more classes and then we can engage some more groups. These end up being pretty meaningful moments for students that are involved. You can keep rolling too, Gwen, because they're doing things that they don't usually do in other academic courses. This one we can slow down a little bit, and a shout out to my brothers and sisters at Penland and wherever Ellie came up with this wood, which I actually ended up loving. But another iteration of this, because we were dealing with the pandemic and we were trying to schedule a conference and it wasn't happening. So instead of just dying in that frustration, we just, well, let's do, what's the next version that we're going to do? So we did a fair amount of, there's Amy actually on the screen talking to a group of kids that we worked with on a weekend project when we were building picnic tables for BeLoved Asheville. We also did a picnic tables inside of another class that was a first-year seminar class. This is still the children on that one day. And this was an awesome day. And then we went back another day and painted them together. There's Leslie again. And that's the crew. And Ethan is there with us too. Lynn, who you saw earlier, and Ethan, they're postdoc fellows. And then Ethan was there on the painting day also. So we went back, and then now they're out there. I go back to that church actually once a week for another group that I'm in. And it's awesome to roll in and see all the tables were under the tent this year when the church did summer camps. That led into probably one of the most successful things that we, or at least the thing that really felt deep in our university community really saw us, is that we did a quad build program to where you could sign up and come in and build picnic tables with us one day, which was really hugely successful. BeLoved was there, Amy spoke, and it was actually, now we're being asked, can you do that every year? And of course, we know the answer to that. And that's Bodie on the table, by the way, the shop dog at Steam. Poncho in the middle there, who is always taking, if you see one photo and it stands out, is like, wow, the color's right, composition's awesome. He likely took that photo. So thanks for that, Ellie.
Thank you, Brent. We had some amazing just work days together, and they didn't feel like work at all. There was laughter, and I mean we planed through stacks and stacks of 2x4s together, and it was probably one of my favorite days of the year. So I want to check.
That was a system we had that day.
Yeah, it was. I want to check in with our moderator, Monica, and make sure how we are on time.
We're really short on time because we want to be able to chat with you all about the experiences. So do you want to just flip through some of the contributions from our school partnerships?
Yeah, these next two sort of programs that we designed. Oh,
I said shout out to Karen. That's all I said.
Shout out to Karen Ernst right there in the middle.
Yeah. So this was where we were connecting with universities all over the country. This was at University of Edinburgh with Karen Ernst. This was one of our major collaborations with California College of the Arts, where they were using locally sourced wood to design products for BeLoved and ship those all the way over. We connected with North House Folk School and John C. Campbell Folk School, and worked with some really talented craftspeople and received so many donations. And this is where the project really sort of started to break out, because we were contacting craft schools. And so it became more about, it became less about, furniture and more about furnishings, and different materials were invited in. And we got sort of a lot more diverse with our donations. And this is Chelsea Witt, a Furniture Society member, who had her class make small plant stands. So next slide is going to describe our program called All the Small Things, which was a call out to individuals. And this is sort of the call to everyone in this video that still exists, where this was for artists and craftspeople who maybe have prototypes, who maybe have pieces that hadn't sold and needed a home. This was an opportunity to give those pieces a chance to be appreciated and loved. And we got lots of donations. Next slide. Candlesticks, woodblock prints, wood turnings, CNC'd spoons, woven stools. And this was put out to our Furniture Society membership and through Instagram. And we just got a really huge response. Some glass blowers, donated all this wonderful glassware. Next slide. And I'm going to hand it back to you, Monica. Thank you.
Thanks for speeding through that. And it's great to see the pictures. We did have one question where ceramics included. That was just a quick question. And yes, I think almost every facet of craft and materials were included in some way, shape, or form, right? Metals, glass, ceramics, textiles, you name it. All right, well, now we're going to segue into actually having a conversation around some of these things. So, Rachel, do you need to say anything?
I don't think so, Monica, but thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I keep looking over to make sure that we're doing all the right things here. So thank you for your patience, attendees, as we deal with the technical glitches. So Craft for Greater Good, as you've heard, is an initiative to connect with and serve our annual conference cities through partnerships and the creation of impactful projects. And it is also a way for us to promote the value of making and to bring it into the broader culture. I wanted to hear from our group of partners what their thoughts are on how does craft make a difference in this partnership and work, and what is so powerful and impactful about the acts of making and creative problem solving. I know, Amy, you talk very eloquently about this, and I wonder maybe we could start with Amy, since her organization was the recipient of a lot of this effort.
Sure, I just think it changes literally everything. And I'll tell a story to sort of illustrate that. I had a friend on the street, Larry, literally lived on a sidewalk bench. He loved pizza. We used to bring him pizza. So one of the things that we would do at BeLoved is just meet people and connect with them, and begin to offer friendship and community. And then we lift each other. And so we had developed this great friendship with Larry. He was quite the comedian, and we all enjoyed visiting him. And so we were finally able to see him move into a new place in public housing. We even did a countdown to his move, so we'd see him every day. And finally he said, "Today's the day." And so I'll never forget going to visit him. So often when we saw people move off the streets into housing, we would take a welcome home gift and visit. And so we went to Larry's place. And as I walked in, I saw a plastic wrap mattress on the floor. And he opened all these empty cabinets. And there was one box of mismatched canned goods. I don't even think you could make a full meal really out of what was there. And I thought, how do you make a home out of this? And we literally went and bought him sort of all the makings for home, but that really got us thinking as we began to build homes, that it was very significant that we look to artists and crafts folks to really help us move houses into homes energetically. And that was so important, the things that surrounded people and allowed them to feel like they belong and could rest and enjoy life and create, put down roots and create home. And so we were looking for each other sort of at the same time, and it just birthed something so beautiful.
And for the students who, most of all, probably all experience a much different way of living, just the conversation that we had around the idea of what is a home struck a chord and lit them on fire, like a lot of other students are not sometimes lit on fire as far as making things.
And I think from a perspective as an artist who's making, very often the people who are able to afford the items that we have, are kind of in the smaller percentile of earners. And it just, we all have that feeling, we have that one nice thing. When we use it, it feels so good. And to just be like, okay, I'm going to devote my time today and I'm going to give it to somebody who doesn't normally get that opportunity to, have that, specially made object. And, even though the individuals haven't moved into the houses yet, and it might not be like, it is for them, it's for that person who's moving in there. And so that feels really good.
Ellie, do you want to add, or
When people start to ask, I was going to say, when people start to ask about the details of the project and its development, keep in mind that like there was a many points within this where Amy could say as a director of this, well, we're not ready, but there was never an option. There was never an option to the team either. So that it can it continues to go on. And it's so deeply felt when you experience, for me, it was makers I didn't know, but an extremely thoughtful addition to the house. Like, whoa, who made the coat racks that look like I want them, and they're, so it's just the beauty. It's just purely about the beauty that was added to this basically blank canvas. Sorry, Ellie.
I think someone needs to unmute Ellie.
She was in control. Now she's not.
There.
There you go. Oh no, it keeps going back and forth.
Nope. Sorry, everybody.
We can go back to it, I guess.
The only thing I wanted to add was that all of these things are such conversation starters, and it gets us talking with each other and with one another about big ideas, small ideas, and just like creates a lot of momentum and connection.
I think that's actually a great segue, because one of the things that was really moving to me was to see how when we started to take this idea of knowledge sharing and skill set sharing to youth and to programs around the country, that it started to open this conversation about what was going on in Asheville with BeLoved, also how making could make a difference. And so it changed the conversation, at least from our membership, from around marketplace, which is primarily what we often talk about as a membership organization, to thinking about how you can make a difference in your community, but use your power, your skill set for good. So I'm wondering, can we talk a little bit about knowledge sharing? So
that's the radical shift, Monica. That's the radical shift. I mean, and it's your organization that, pushed that forward at that one moment. But I could feel that in Milwaukee. It was like, oh, people are starting to think, what can I do when I go back home?
Yeah.
And so this is just one town, one place. This can be duplicated a million ways. Smaller parts of it can be pulled out, So yeah, that's the shift.
So like from a maker standpoint, why do you think it's critical to share your knowledge and to pass skill sets on?
I mean, not only to share them, but in an equitable, way where everybody has the opportunity. I mean, that's, why we were so like, we have to make these classes like a free option so that this isn't, keeping anybody out. And, so yeah. I mean, we're all so much better if we all share the information, and then, you know, somebody takes something off what you taught them and they do something else, and then you do that, you know, and then it, you know, it or not butterflies out. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I like butterflies.
I know when we were working in Milwaukee with the teens, one of the things that was really empowering for the youth to feel that they had agency to make a difference in their communities. And I wonder, Annie and Ellie, while you were working in the Asheville community, and from you, Amy, did you feel any of that energy of like, oh, I actually can help something that's right in my own backyard with my own hands, with my own efforts?
I definitely felt that on the UNC Asheville quad. I mean, I love the way that sort of craft was disruptive of shared sort of more public space, that we came out of buildings and we're building, you know, right out in the open, and anybody could come up and jump in and learn a skill and say, when they left, like I left something, I made something that will last, you know, decades and is going to change the life of somebody else. And I think that is just fundamentally radical when we think about the power of craft. You know, I think about this project with BeLoved, you know, people automatically thought, well, oh, we need, you know, engineers and architects and people that can use power tools. And nobody thought about, you know, craftspeople and artists. And that was something very innate to BeLoved, is that we need to call on, you know, the people that really, the creatives that can really do some very special work with us. And I was so moved by all these objects that were created. They're very special. And, you know, working with people that are often unseen or dehumanized, rendered invisible or treated maligned, you know, in the community, to have something that has come from somebody's heart and hands. What that says to somebody, it can literally change lives in terms of people's trauma around that. To have somebody say, I see you through this object. I took the time to make this very special thing for you. I can't wait to see the stories of when these beautiful things meet their people in these homes.
You give me goosebumps every time you talk, Amy.
Every time she talks.
Every time.
We get the goosebumps.
I've heard the Jane story, I don't know how many times, and I had to turn my camera off because I was moved again.
One of the things we spoke about in our plans for this idea of craft for a greater good was when we were going to our annual conference cities, we were like the circus train pulling in and out. A lot of energy and effort would go into shaping a 3-day event for a very specific group and small group of people to come to a city. And so now what we're trying to do is to make a different impact and to leave some kind of a legacy that really helps somebody in a community. So Amy, I want to ask you, and we wanted to do this in partnership with you. So I want to shift the conversation a little bit to talking about why partnerships are so important to this program, like, and its success. And in turn, what do you think the legacy of this partnership might be now that we're about to move on to a different community?
I think it's just so significant what has happened with this partnership. And I lift it up in so many different ways when I talk about partnership with our organization. Community is really at the heart, like I said, of everything we do. And that's what I thought was done so well with this, is that we were building community throughout this partnership and really building it to last. Which I didn't see a lot of in my work. I've worked, you know, I'm 50 years old. I've worked most of my life in community work. And typically you'll see what I call drive-by partners. You know, it's an event, it's a one-time thing, it's a couple of hours here and there. And what y'all signed up for was much deeper. And I have to say, you know, in the face of the pandemic, which brought, you know, some horrific things in our world, the pandemic sort of slowed us down and made us really savor this partnership even more, and brought out, if I'm in the kitchen, so I'm going to talk about cooking a little bit. You know, when you create this powerful rendering, when you render something down and find all its amazing flavors, this is what happened with us, is that we got to really allow this partnership to simmer and to look at it from lots of different angles and say, oh, it could do this and it could do this. And so I just, hearing Ellie, as you shared all the different aspects of it, and it just keeps growing. We're not finished yet. And so it's so exciting. And we're also connected, to the partnerships happening in Minnesota and New Orleans. And I love that too. And I think I just want to uplift this in such a beautiful way as a model of what partnership can really look like.
By the way, the chat is blowing up, and I appreciate all of your generosity, specifically Sarah and Jennifer. Questions in there too, if somebody wants to.
We're going to go for questions in a little bit, but I still want to get you all to talk a little bit about some of the things. I feel like, Amy, you do such a great job in holding this up. And I think another idea around this is to really make the threads of connection between former iterations of this project, the current ongoings, and just so people know that we will be, while we're not leaving Asheville, because that was the intention, to always have a legacy and a relationship. The next iteration of this project will be in New Orleans with a community-based organization there called Yaya, that Annie actually has a wonderful experience and background with. It's a youth-based organization. And so we are just in our early phases of launching the next iteration of this project in New Orleans with the Yaya youth. And we'll see what that has to bring. And every iteration of this project will be very different. And I think that is really what made working with makers possible, is that you all are absolute creative problem solvers. And so watching Ellie and Annie and Brent put their minds together when the pandemic came down on us and really changed the terrain of what we were able to do, they just rolled up their sleeves and put their thinking caps on, because that's what we do as makers. We shift and we pivot, hate that word, but we shift and we try to make sure that we can use our skill sets for good. Ellie, do you have
and I feel like this,
or Amy?
Go ahead, Amy.
well, I was just going to say, okay, I was just going to say, when we talk about artists sharing their knowledge and experiences with their particular crafts and sharing that, it's like the same thing with the organizations. There's, in New Orleans, they're trying to do the same thing. It's like we're all trying to do the same thing. Lift everybody up and make everybody safe, and provide opportunities. And so there's so much to be learned when we go check out what everybody else is doing in other areas and bring those that knowledge back with us. And so it's exciting to expand those connections.
Monica, one of the most powerful spaces that I experienced, and I know everyone, it was adjacent to this, and specifically if you were there working with the kids. I mean, you look a middle schooler in the eye, you talk to, and they've been introduced to the project. They've been introduced to the project through Amy Cantrell. So they're also in their hometown. You hand them, you should hand them a Makita cordless drill, by the way, but just a little product placement there. And you look them in the eye and tell them what we're going to do, and just get out of the way, because the tenacity and the connectivity that they have to the meaning of this whole thing is raw and real. They get it.
Absolutely. This is actually a good segue for one of our next to last points, which is that the enthusiasm for craft for a greater good has gone so far as to inspire people who felt that they didn't really have a place within this organization to become involved and to either join us or to rejoin us. Amy and Ellie, this program really seemed to be something of a clarion call for younger sets of makers, or for people, as I mentioned, who might have felt marginalized. Can you speak to that? And why do you think this is an important component in the arc of a maker?
Great question.
Amy, I'll just sort of, position my comments as an artist and a maker. And, the very sort of origin of my interest in this project came at a time when everything else was sort of shut down, and I had just arrived in a studio space that I was supposed to develop into this very self-sufficient, artist-made, artist-run in space as an individual. And I was excited to do that, but I was also really overwhelmed. And it was it was my reaction to reach outward and to want to just ask for help, because it just felt so big. And then also, like, I was supposed to do all this work and then just like be alone and like not like be able to share that. And also it was what I'm doing right now is just, has a lot of resources connected to it. And I just felt like, yeah, what a shame if I'm the only one, in here. So as an artist and a maker, you kind of get yourself into this space where, there's an expectation to kind of do it all on your own, but you're making work for an audience, a target audience. And it's a conundrum, because there's a sort of myth that exists because that you're supposed to be in your studio alone working, but it's the narrative that we're sort of rewriting, is that if you reach outward, if you sort of connect with other organizations and partner with people who have skills and knowledge that you don't have, that really powerful things can happen. And again, it just creates energy. And I think that energy alone is one of the, it's just so palpable when you're in the studio, if you have it or if you don't, and it's elusive, it comes and goes, it's hard to harness. And when you have other people, when you're connected to other people and organizations, it comes that much easier, and good things come when you have good energy. And so I think that's sort of where I stand with the question Monica posed, which you might want to repeat because I kind of went off track, but yeah.
Well, it was just around the idea of how when we launched this program as a membership organization, we were often relegated to professional development programs, all things that have a place but focus a lot on marketplace. And so for us to shift this, it became a clarion call for younger makers, or for people who had previously felt marginalized on the outskirts of this community. Suddenly they felt that there was an open call and an entry point for getting engaged in or back in to this community of makers, because they felt that they could somehow.
I'm not that young, but I'm one of those people who, because of Craft for the Greater Good, I went to my first Furniture Society conference when it was in San Francisco, and I kind of was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to come back to this. And then you guys came the next year with the Craft for the Greater Good, and I was like, okay, well, I will. It's kind of, we put out like little. I was like, if they're going to do this, I'm going to come, and I would put my money where my mouth is and support this organization that is going to make an effort to be, a better member of society as an organization, which is,
Yeah, and
we should all be trying to do.
Yeah, and I am old. So I can say too, as a founding member of an organization that started in 1987, the Furniture Society, this was by far the most alive I felt as adjacent to the membership, and the shift of the organization and the focus of the organization. And so really appreciate your leadership on all of that, Monica, as we moved into that space. And it totally like jump started me again to like, oh, this is how I can connect now to the work I'm already doing,
Well, thank you for all of that. Again, this is all about partnerships and connections, and the goal being to broaden the pipeline for engagement. And it is a two-way street. We won't have a field if we don't broaden our engagement with other people and share our stories out. And in turn, it's a way for us to tell the stories of people in communities just like Asheville, and with organizations just like Amy's. They're all over the country. And we as a community of makers can make a difference. We truly can.
There is only one Amy Cantrell, though.
There's only one Amy, that's true. I'm going to turn over to some of the questions. This is where I'm really glitchy, but Rachel's going to feed me some questions, and I'm going to pitch them out to our panel here. From Diane, are any of the homes, this is, I guess, to Amy, are any of the homes occupied now, and for how long? And what feedback do you get from the residents about living with the beautiful furniture?
Oh, thank you for that question. So we're right now building the full village, which has been really fun. I ended up getting my general contractor's license, which is really a shock to me. And so here we are, full-on construction right now is going on behind me. We've framed up 3 houses. We're getting ready to put in footers for 3 more, and we'll be able to welcome residents. We believe in the fall of this year, which will be really beautiful. And one of my thoughts for the ongoing legacy of this is I want to tell not only the story of the artisan that crafted this beautiful object, but then the story of when it meets its person, and what that means. I have gotten to tell this story, however, a lot, because a lot of people visit this model home, people who are struggling through the housing crisis. We were also in the Parade of Homes this year. And so this is one of my favorite stories to tell, because people are in awe of these beautiful things in this home. And I think it really sets this village apart, because it says something about how we feel and view the people that are coming to live here, because these are people that we love and have been in relationship with. And so I think it really shows in the surroundings here and the beauty, because everybody deserves beauty, and everybody deserves craft in their life, because it gives them something really special. And we think that that's going to then ripple out. I think that we're going to have a community of makers living here at the BeLoved Village, because they're going to see all these objects and they're going to be like, oh, I want to make things that are beautiful, and share that, with the community. Residents here will get to create their own commons, which is really exciting. So we have land set aside and a budget for that. And I have a feeling there are a lot of makers in the future of that part of this as well, and some partnerships being birthed.
Thank you, Amy. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. There was a question from Joyce. Are there plans to take this concept, and this is now where Rachel and Gwen can jump in here. Are there plans to take this concept to the American craft markets to hopefully influence the craftspeople in rethinking their marketing to the small percentage of buyers who purchase their work? And how can craft lift up the larger community?
You got the easy question.
I just thought I'd punt an easy question to you and Gwen.
The easy question that you punted to us, right?
Yep, always.
Here's Rachel.
Hi. It is a really great question. And I think it is definitely one worth exploring. I know that we're going into strategic planning, and the shows and the marketplace is one of the big topics of conversation about how we bring those back, and how we, add in an element of this idea of craft, creating a greater good, right? And how we can kind of refocus our marketplaces a little bit around those concepts, and bring those into the fold a little bit more.
Yeah, I would
that's me, of course, speaking personally as well, because the organization as a whole is going through some transitions too. So,
well,
I mean, it could be so cool to have one of those things where you donate a piece and that gets you a little discount off your booth or something. I mean, there's so many possibilities of,
I think that's such a great suggestion, and we'll definitely add that to our, we have kind of like a parking lot of ideas that we're going to be kind of exploring and looking at a little bit more closely as we go through the strategic planning process.
Well, we were hoping that this model, I was going to joke with you and say, well, I don't think that's so much of a question, but as a challenge to the ACC.
Mm-hmm.
But we really wanted this program to look like a pilot, to get people to think in their own respects. And one of the reasons that we decided to try to have each program take on a very different format and feel and flavor is that, first of all, we shouldn't walk into a community and tell them what they need. It should really come from the community, and therefore it has more meaning in those communities. And craft is in all these different communities. For every ACC and Furniture Society, there's other craft organizations, and we were hoping that maybe we would inspire different organizations in a position of power to start making change like this. Are there other questions that you think that we should be? I'm trying to scroll, but I'm a little blind about looking at this tiny.
We had to do home occupants transition into different long-term housing. So maybe that's where Amy could take a stab at her vision on that. And can they select an object? I love this, to take as a positive memory to support them passing this forward. Then we have no shortage of objects still coming to BeLoved. I like this.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, so to answer those questions, one of the things that we really wanted to do was develop a model of home that was not in our community. And we also thought was really a gap in a lot of communities across America. You know, one of the things that I'll just lift up is that every community in America is in a housing crisis. And so we need to take this seriously throughout our communities. And so we really wanted to make sure that we were creating homes that were deeply affordable. So that for us is for folks at 30 to 40% area median income, or what HUD calls extreme poverty. And we wanted these homes to be community oriented, to be sustainable, and for folks to be able to have equity attached so that they can lift themselves out of poverty. And so what we need in our community is more permanent housing. The person was saying, you know, what happens when they have to move on? Well, they don't have to move on, because in our community, if you're in a transitional housing program, you can't get out of it because we don't have enough permanent housing. So these are meant to be permanent homes. And we have a home ownership program, and then we have a rent equity program for folks that can't get a home mortgage, or if there's a piece of land that can't be bought and sold on the public market. So there's some things around land development. Even your sewer and gravity have to do with that. And so we wanted to make sure that no matter what, people could be building equity, because that's what helps lift people out of poverty. Most people in our community are housed into poverty forever if they're living on a low income. And so we wanted to change that and break that mold. And so people will be able to earn equity if they decide to move for whatever reason. They get to take all of that equity with them. If they stay long term, they can borrow off that equity, just like you could your home equity to move forward in life, purchase a reliable vehicle, go back to school, start a small business. And one of the things that we decided about these beautiful objects is we would let people kind of select them, so they'll be able to go in and see them all and pick which one really resonates with them, different things. So we have, for example, 12 chairs for 12 homes that are the shaker tape weaving. So people get to select which colors they like and things like that. I think it'd be wonderful for folks if they're transitioning to take something special with them and to keep the story alive. And one of the things I really love are these notes that you got to see that we put inside the chairs, and lots of makers sent different notes and things. I think it's very special for people to know that they were thought of when people were making these beautiful items for the homes. And I think that's where craft really takes on a power that is greater.
I'm looking at Annie and Ellie, and I'm just thinking, this project sang because of you two. And it was, you can see the trickle down effect, and really, like, you can feel the hand to the hand to the hand to the hand.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to thank this team for all of their efforts. And I want to again thank the Furniture Society for being willing to take this leap into territory that is not very typical for a membership organization such as ours. And I know that we've talked briefly. I think what I'd like to end on is sending people away with some basic brainstorm ideas on, if somebody is interested in getting involved, what can they do? So of course, you can always tap the Furniture Society. We have a website where you can learn about craft for a greater good. We have lists of organizations around the country where you can glom on together with like-minded makers. I'm fairly sure the American Craft Council has similar resources available to help, like, bring yourself geographically closer to like-minded makers. And but I want to ask Annie and Ellie what your thoughts are, and like, what could people do as individuals to try their hand at making a difference?
For me, you know, it's so craft brings you back to the basics. You know, there's always a starting point, and the very starting point of BeLoved even was just a group of people, you know, sitting in a room, just casually talking about how to start something up. And the same thing happened again when, you know, you and Brent were in a room, and me and Annie were trying to design these workshops. And like, it's all very, there's always a starting point, and it usually involves a friend and, and making, for us in this crowd. And so, my message is pretty simple. Bring the things that you make, to your friends, and then bring those items to other networks, and let it grow from there. I don't know.
And mine would be specifically to the makers in the audience is to, this is how I do it, as I connect to the meaning that is in my gut when I get to make things and when I get to experience myself in that space. And then further expansions that, how can I connect my heart to another heart? And essentially it's through that space, and it's through that knowing. It's the thing that we don't doubt when we're in our groove. It's the thing that's where the power is. It's not a new power. It's not a different thing. It's like this, it's this superpower we've had the whole time. But when it gets multiplied, as Ellie just said, and you're adjacent to someone else doing it, we all know the power of collaboration, and that's the word that goes with it. But sometimes the thing that seems to be hesitant is to people to think it's something new and different, and it's not. It's not something new and different. It's the power that's every moment we've all had that's transformed each one of us as makers to have materials in our hands, move through processes, and make an object.
And I think my thoughts on it are, Ellie touched on this a little bit earlier, but like, gone are the days where the ideal is the artist toiling away alone in their studios. And, you do not make in an isolated, environment, an isolated world. And, the world's not going to get better by itself. And it needs, all of us to kind of work on that. And that does mean looking outside of yourself, and not always putting yourself first. And you will be amazed, if you haven't done it before, that when you don't put yourself first, it actually does put you first, because it feels so good. And it's just like, it's a great, it just feels good to just feel like, okay, you know what, I'm not going to think about myself and my petty problems for today. I'm going to think about somebody else's problems.
I would say that by design, Craft for a Greater Good is encouraging our field, and I say that very broadly, to look beyond itself, which provides a mission and constructive goals for the things that we make. And Craft for a Greater Good, or something like it, has been missing in the field. And
Monica, I was going to say, when you talked earlier, it's like you wrote these grants, to get the money that started this, that, paid for Ellie and I to come in and get to spend our time doing this, and, to pay for materials. And it's like, you could have been like, I'm going to write a grant for my job is to put on a Furniture Society conference. And you chose, okay, I'm going to take a risk here and see what everybody says, but I'm going to write the grant for this. And that we just need more people to take that leap and
I agree.
not think about that first.
That's a perfect segue to something I haven't said.
Okay, go ahead.
If you want to get involved and you want to change, think of an organization such as BeLoved Asheville.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Amy has room for support for anything in her coffers to support this project. And then there's one in your local community that you could support.
That's right.
With lots of sweat labor too. But I would also challenge us all to think about what financially and our monetary gain that we could shift to these projects. Because without that, we don't have what Annie was talking about.
That's right. And I think that what really happens here is that it creates community, and it draws on community, and it creates a very diverse community, because it speaks to people in ways that Marketplace or other facets of what we do as membership organizations do. So with that, I want to thank the American Craft Council for allowing us to tell this story. It's such an honor to be able to share this experience. And I want to thank Annie and Ellie and Brent and Amy, of course, and Leslie and Pam Robinson for all of their hard boots on the ground work over
Yay,
2
Pam.
And this work, as I said, will continue in New Orleans. I want to thank our funders, the Horn Foundation, the Sarah Little Turnbull Foundation, the Maxwell Hanrahan Foundation, and the individuals who supported this program through donations and words of support. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Rachel. And we hope to see you all at some of our future upcoming events. And we hope to just see you engaged. Thank you so much.
Yes,
Thank you,
thanks.
everyone.
Yeah, thanks everybody. And I'll just hop in to say a big thanks to everybody who attended. Apologies for any of the snafus and trying to join the Zoom room. But this is being recorded. It will be available. We're going to send it out to everybody who registered, and it will be on our website as well. So you can come back to this conversation again and again, however many times you need to be completely and utterly inspired by everybody here. So thank you so much to all of you for joining us. We really appreciate it, and please go out and live inspired lives around making.
Yes.
Thank you, American Craft Council.
Thank you.